It's a brand new room. We're still breaking it in. Good evening. Thank you all for coming. My name is Mitchell Stevens. I'm a sociologist on the faculty here at Stanford. Are we the Stanford Graduate School of Education yet, Claude? The Stanford Graduate School of Education? And a co-convener of Education's Digital Future. What is Education's Digital Future? I don't know. Nobody knows. We are building that future right now. A full generation has been living and learning online, but participation in formal education is still largely accomplished face-to-face in physical space. That change, the change from co-presence in physical space of learning to a digitally mediated learning, raises very large questions. How do people learn best digitally? What does educational equity mean in a digital world? Who will profit from the expanding market for digital educational products? Most important, countless ongoing informal conversations. Living through a revolution requires cool heads, fast action, and teamwork. It has been my privilege to do this work, this little bit of this much larger revolution, in tandem with a very talented bunch of smart, capable, flexible, very cool people. My co-convener and SGSE professor, Roy P., and I'm going to ask everyone to stand when I say their name or their group, and you're going to stay standing for a minute, okay? Stay standing. Postdoctoral fellow Abby Larson. Where's Abby? Doctoral students Daniel Green and Laura Moorhead. Webmaster, tireless webmaster Heap Ho. Who tends? There he is. Administrators Johanna Mansour and Justin Nguyen. Are you ready? All of the students in Education 403X, Education's Digital Future, stand, please. External Relations Team Holly Maderman and Rebecca Smith and their colleagues. A fabulous IT team. And, of course, our Stanford Graduate School of Education Dean, Claude Steele, who has encouraged this effort and found the resources to make it possible. Everybody, thank you. Here we go. I do hope you'll visit us online. This really is just one of a whole bunch of opportunities to participate in discussions this year. Our meeting now is happening in the same time footprint as the course, Education 403X, Education's Digital Future, which meets from 5:15 to 7:05 every Tuesday. Doors are open every time to visitors and drop-ins. Please come. Sometimes there's food afterwards. The website will have sort of an ongoing collection of stuff we think is interesting, worth paying attention to, or stuff that reminds us where we've come from. We've got a nice little series of Schoolhouse Rock on the main website right now, for those of you who are old enough to remember what Schoolhouse Rock is. We have a Silicon Valley meetup group that we'll be using to keep in contact with the entrepreneurial community here in the Valley. It's our hope that as we're all thinking about the very rapid changes that digital technology is bringing to our daily work as educators and students, that you find opportunities to think about some of those changes in a productive way here. So it's really a pleasure to have you. You know, you can't turn on a computer these days without hearing something about these MOOCs. MOOCs. Right? Chronicle of Education tells us we have a case of MOOC madness. It's another word I didn't know about 6 months ago. I don't know why they gave me a microphone. I don't know how to do anything. But I can think of no better person to help us, sort of start this large public conversation than Adrian Sannier, whom I met at a convening in Washington last spring at a gathering convened by the American Enterprise Institute. Adrian Sannier is the Senior Vice President for Product at Pearson. In February 2012, Sannier was named one of the 12 tech innovators who are transforming campuses in the Chronicle of Higher Education. Next week we have another one of those people coming, Candace Thill, at noon in this room. Prior to joining Pearson in 2010, Sannier was CIO, Chief Information Officer at Arizona State University, the nation's largest residential institution. And I must add, sorry, Stanford, a pioneer in using digital technology to rethink higher education. He's been professor for the past 12 years in the Division of Computing Studies at Arizona State University and as the Stanley Chair of Interdisciplinary Engineering at Iowa State University. Before joining the Academy, Sannier led the PC game studio EAI Interactive, which created best-selling titles for game publishers like Mattel, Hasbro, Crayola, Disney, and Pixar, as well as educational content for leading publishers such as Elsevier, McGraw-Hill, and Pearson. Whether you like it or not, there's a whole new world coming, and this guy has seen it. Please join me in welcoming Adrian Sannier to Stanford.
Mitchell, thank you very much. Thank you, son. Appreciate it. I can't tell you what an honor and a daunting pleasure it is to be here at Stanford. It is challenging to think of something that you can say to such smart people. I will instead try to be as honest with you as I can about how it looks to me. I'll talk for about 40 minutes, and then I hope what we'll have is a conversation about the future. I'll do my best to mix it up. I'll try to say some things that I think will be somewhat controversial, because in my experience, that's what liberates a conversation the most. I'm going to start by saying that, I don't know, I must have had a bad time at school because I want it to be different. It isn't that I didn't have good teachers, I did, but they weren't all good, and they weren't all great, and it wasn't, I can't say that every moment was riveting. And I feel every time I hear that, oh, this generation doesn't pay attention. They're always on their phone. You know, I find I'm always on my phone too. And I'm really on my phone a lot. In fact, I'm willing to bet that as this talk goes on and it gets more and more dull for you, you're going to get on your phone as well. Because in this kind of a gathering, oh, well, it's acceptable. Somehow in school, maybe not so. And so I want to talk about, could technology help us make this more engaging? And will it ever actually happen? So without further ado, I'll carry on. Mitchell mentioned my background, and it is a little unusual. I'm currently working for Pearson. It's a multinational corporation that has about 36,000 employees and about $8 billion in the education industry. And many of you think that we charge too much for textbooks. And I maybe agree with you. I would like to see us stop selling textbooks. And I'm trying to understand what comes after them. And so it's conversations like this that help us sort of think through what that might be. Prior to that, I was Michael Crow's CIO, and I'm going to go through this a little bit because it's relevant to how I see it. If you get bored, you could tweet a comment to pound rockstar teacher. Like, this guy's a knucklehead. That'd be all right. I also have written a blog post that covers some of the things I'm going to talk about, raises some questions at the end. So again, if you get bored, have a look, see what you think. Maybe leave a comment. All kinds of comments are welcome. This curve haunts my dreams because I think it's the curve that comes up over and over again as we live in this technological age. This is the curve humans live on. It's the one where you get a little better every day, just a little bit better. Maybe if you spend a lot of money, you can tilt that curve a little bit up or a little bit down. But generally speaking, this is how humans get better. This curve, this is like how Google gets better. Like 1 minute you can search the web and you type things in and then the answers come back. And then you turn away and you come back and 6 months later it's reading your mind. No, I mean seriously, if you didn't know the trick, you type in 4 or 5 letters and it goes, do you mean this? Well, yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. Thank you very much. Now, because we're clued into the trick, we know it's a trick. It's a magician's trick. There's a technology thing, and there's like data behind it, whatever. We don't really think of it as magic. But, I mean, it doesn't stop getting better. And at this kind of incredible rate. And some of our institutions are going to be challenged to keep pace with that curve. This is why students get bored, I think. Because some parts of their life, see those guys with the laptop row back there? Right? Like what they're doing is, they're not wasting a minute. The minute I get dull to them, rather than be polite, they're going to dial in and learn something or figure something out. No, that guy's not right. This isn't true. Or they're going to do their homework or whatever. Right? This is the... And we've been talking all day about, like, is this polite? Is it moral? Is it correct? Is it... Whatever you may think about whether it's good or bad, it is so. And it's getting more so and more so. And the pressure that comes on us as these devices, as this information technology capability that seems to be at the heart of this curve, accelerates, I think our institutions have to adapt to it. Now, I have to atone for having squandered my chance. I was part of a company in the mid-'90s that was founded by some friends of mine from graduate school, and we were all educators. And we wanted to use 3D technology to make educational content. We thought, man, this could be amazing. And we would make these pitches to people like Pearson, to people like Elsevier. Hey, do you realize what's possible? Let me show you what our people can do. We can, yeah, that's great, they'd say. We've got $50,000 to make a CD to go with our book. So what can you do for that? I don't know. Show up. Make some mock-ups. Meanwhile, if you went to Mattel or Hasbro or Disney, they'd just like take you back to the vault where the money was kept. Because they knew that if you made a piece of entertainment, like this particular piece was a really fine educational program known as Barbie Magic Hairstyler. This game was basically my crack as a kid. I'd probably still be playing it if it was compatible with something other than Windows 98. So, you know, all this wherewithal that we assembled in Iowa in the mid-'90s so that we could teach kids, you know, how to adorn themselves, which hairstyles made them look fetching. It's somehow not right. Why didn't it work? Well, there was no market. There's just no market. There was no market for it. Boy, that was a frustrating thing to hear. So when that company got sold, I joined, well, here, let me show you some other stuff, right? Like blah, blah, blah. Right? These were really great. It was super fun to do this. It was amazing, really cool. Occasionally, we'd make a piece of educational content, but we'd always have to take it out of our hide. Always have to do it at a loss in order to do it, and never got close to what our aspirations would be. Never. No market. Just, in the end, like, I feel crass bringing up money at such a bastion of the academy. Right? But ultimately, if there's no seriously, I do, because it's not what we normally talk about. Well, it's not what we normally talk about, right? And if we were at Harvard, we'd talk about it less. But who knows who that is? No Randy Newman fans in this entire piece of California? That's tragic. Anyway, no market. About 5 or 6 years later, one of the guys from the board of directors of the company, Michael Crow, who was at that time vice provost for research at Columbia, he tried to make a market. He got, in fact, it's reminiscent of what's happening here with the MOOCs. The Kings, the Yales, the Ivy Leagues, the Columbias, they all get together. Hey, we're going to make educational content to beat the band. We're going to spend lots and lots of money, and we're going to develop these really cool... No market. Fathom was well named, because it ended up at the bottom of the sea. Took a big treasure chest full of money with it. No market. So I went off to Iowa State University. I worked at the Human-Computer Interaction Lab there. We had this really cool 6-sided cave. It was like the greatest video game on the planet. You could get anybody to come in there and write the coolest, fun software. Probably should have stayed there, really. But Michael called. He said, no, New American University, we're reinventing what it is to be a a research university of the public variety. We're going to grow excellence, access to make impact. You got to come and be the CIO. We're going to figure out how to get some of our systems to work. Okay, great, Michael, I'll do it. Terrific. I loved his vision. If you don't know Michael, if you don't know his work, I think it's worth learning about because he's making an enormous difference down there at Arizona State. He got me in the Wall Street Journal. It's a very coveted thing to get your stippled portrait. Of course, it was right next to, Sannier destroys university by implementing PeopleSoft. But I got there. Anyway, what dominated our thinking was that curve. Think about information technology in the academy. We started it. We, the academy, started using information technology. Who had email addresses first? Companies? No, the academy. Who had networks first? Well, yeah, the defense, sure, okay, right. But then, come on. Right, but in human enterprise as opposed to the networks deployed by information technology groups coming out of the academy. Right? But somewhere along the line, this thing caught on. And the minute it caught on, your information technology group is on the human curve. And this thing is on some other curve. The rate at which it improves, the rate at which it advances, the rate at which it sets student expectations. And so what we said was the only way that we can move the institution forward in terms of its information technology infrastructure is to find partners who are driving on that curve, who are operating at scales 100 to 1,000 times greater than what we can operate inside the institution. And so an example of that was we were the first people to use Google at scale to deliver email to our students. And I only have one T-shirt at Google. That's on the front. And then on the back it says, it's a quote that I gave to the New York Times, like technology from an advanced alien culture. Right, like working with Google, took millions of dollars and months of effort to implement lame email systems. The minute I was willing to just take my hands off the wheel and stop spending any money at all, then Google would bring in 8 gigabytes of space and an email system you could access from any place and just write amazing new innovations every month. Unbelievable. Insulting, actually. No, absolutely insulting. How much, Google? Oh, never mind. Yeah. No, come on. I've got to pay you something. You're 100 times more space than my students have. Your stuff works so much. Can I? No, really. It's nothing. It's a rounding error for us. Insulting. But it got us to get on that curve. In fact, it takes you off this curve, and then they'll jump. And then after that, you're on their curve. You're improving at this other rate. And you can take your time, effort, and energy and devote it other places. Maybe to the application of these kinds of technologies. I was with John Seeley Brown a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about the idea that that curve I just showed you is actually this curve right here. You have a series of S-curves that show technological progress. And when you zoom in on one, when you're on the tail end of one, like the information technology curve that founded information technology at the academy, it accelerated and then they flatten out. They stop giving, the golden goose stops giving eggs. But if you jump to the next curve, then it goes again. And this process is what generates that exponential curve in the large. And so making these jumps, this is how an institution adapts to this kind of change. Why aren't you still working at Arizona State if it's so great? Because Michael wanted to find a way to grow an online program that would have 100,000 distance learners. And the first couple times you try to start that car, he tried to do it in the context of the existing institution. Hey, we have teachers. Hey, we have content. We have student services people. We can process transcripts. Let's just do it online. That car just doesn't start. And lots of other institutions have tried to bring them up from inside. It's very difficult. Because being the master of a brick and mortar business doesn't necessarily make you the master of an online business. In fact, it may get in your way. So he had the idea, go find a partner. Boy, you could find lots of partners. Lots of people want to take your brand. I think we're seeing that now. Lots of people want to take your brand and put you online. But finding somebody who will match your ethos, Finding somebody whose brand won't dilute yours, that was pretty complicated. I won't bore you with the details, but suffice it to say, Pearson was a brand we were already allied with. They were driving some of the biggest for-profits. And so we started to make that deal with them, and I thought, hey, I'm on the wrong side of this. If I got on the other side, this thing could play more than once. So that's how I ended up getting to Pearson. Michael's happy. Look, see? That's the first time I ever saw that. Why? Oh, because he's whacking down $60 million on the growth curve that he wants to be on. Why? Because he found an effective way to find a strategic partner that could match the ethos of his online school, but provide the acceleration necessary to make it work online. So he's using his own faculty, he's using his own departments, he's using many of his own services, but he's supplemented by somebody who can operate at scale. Okay. So all of this, though, is a bit round the edges, isn't it? You know, email systems and making it possible to process online applications and be able to enroll people in online courses, it's a bit round the edges. Shouldn't information technology actually make it possible for people to learn faster? Shouldn't information technology make it possible for people who can't learn certain things under the current modality to learn them? Isn't that what improvement in education would really mean? Like if we imagined Euclid figures out that you can teach geometry and writes that book, Elements, right? How much better are we at teaching geometry? Like, I don't even know how long we've been at it. Can somebody tell me how long since Euclid? 2,000 years? Can I get a fact check back there? Right, so, but it's at least many hundreds of years. How much better, how much faster, how many more people can learn geometry now than before? Certainly nothing like this. Is it unreasonable to expect that there could be that kind of progress? Well, I don't think so. I mean, hell, this thing gets better and better. Like amazingly better and better. Right? Unbelievably better and better. Oh, I don't know. This is a human enterprise. This question, can it actually be any better? I can talk about this for hours. Because, like, if it can't be any better, we're in a world of hurt. Because, like, if we've got the gold standard for what it is to educate, if this is the model, this is what it costs, it takes supermen to do it, we have to build these institutions that take hundreds of years to establish in order to be able to train people, to be able to deliver this level of education, given the demand that we now have in the society that we've constructed for people who need to know a heck of a lot more than they know now. If the best we're going to be able to do is the cost models we have, well, let's see. There's something called the Higher Education Index, that is the rate at which tuition goes up. And it outstrips the Consumer Price Index by a factor of several, depending on the year, 2 times, 3 times. As far as I can tell, if any good that behaves like that, fewer and fewer and fewer people can buy it until finally no one can. At a time when we have got to find a way to get people who are ill-prepared, prepared worse than the people we're currently training, to be able to reach levels that we can't get people to today. That's the demand of our society. We have got to find a way to get off that curve and get on that one at the core. Now, I just want you to think for just a second. There isn't a person in this room believes that's possible. I mean, honestly, there isn't. Like, look, I've been doing this a long time, and everybody talks about, oh, this innovation, that innovation. Who was I talking to about panaceas? Right? Oh, this technology or this way of doing it. Or you go to a conference, oh, yeah, it's this kind of learning or that. There isn't a person in the room believes it's actually going to be different, though. Right? Because it's always been this way. And we know how complicated it would be to change. Even if you could find a way to do it, how would you culturally make it change? How would you ever get an organization that is performing at such a high level to alter its way of being? So, for me, it's an iron triangle. It's an iron triangle between those three players. I'll give you an illustration. Back when ebooks were first coming out, publishers and universities locked arms to make sure they wouldn't work. You know, like we've been trying to bring ebooks out successively over the last 15 years. Right at the beginning, they were like these really bad PDF snapshots of existing books. And I claim they were intentionally bad. I claim that it was like an arm's, look, yeah, ebooks, yeah, sure, we're all about them. Oh, look, the students don't like them. Yeah, no kidding, they're terrible. Well, yeah, but since the students don't like them, the professors don't assign them, so we don't have to make them. So none of that's ever going to change. And it has stayed locked. Right? There are things happening around the edges, this class, this place, that place, but most every place else. Any school you go to, from high school to community college to lower tier universities to this place. It's the same as it ever was. How is that ever going to change? Well, this is what I think is at the core of it. This is when you're going to start getting really mad at me. What's at the core of it is the sole proprietor course creation model. This is why there's no market. Say, for example, you have an idea for a program that you're going to help try to create that would devote all the power of information technology to make math easier to learn. What you'll hear, like say you came up with it. You came down to Pearson, you pitched it. No, professors won't teach other professors' courses. I'm sorry. That just won't happen. Maybe if you made a tool for them and they could use it in their own course, you know, because you got to understand, Leslie, courses are crafted by hand, like guns used to be. They're just made one at a time. This is the essence of the quality. Now, I'm sort of making fun a little bit, right? But we do believe it. We believe at the core that that's how the university works. It's my class. I can use a textbook that's mass-produced. And I can disagree with certain parts of that textbook. I can do that. But the assignments, the syllabus, the course objectives, the activities, the lectures, the notes, that's me. That's what I do. That's my thing. Well, if that's the case, then we're stuck on the human scale curve forever. If that's the case, if that's the gold standard, if it can never be changed from that, then how much better can a course get? Well, how much time do you have to spend on it, Max? Maybe you've got a few, like at a research university, you split your time between living a life, doing research, and teaching. And so you're not going to have 29 hours in a day, so whatever you can spend preparing your course. Oh, you say, well, I have some graduate students. Maybe I teach a little bigger course. Yeah, I get that. But still, we're talking about what a basketball team can put together. Well, how much instrumentation can you put in your course? How much measurement can you do about what works and what doesn't work? Like, for example, right now, imagine this were my course. In a way, it is. How many hours did I spend on this lecture? I'd hate to admit it. How do I know how it's going over? Well, I'm looking at you. I'm sampling. There are limits to what I can do in that sole proprietor model. When we decided to deploy technology, right? Because we decided, hey, technology could help professors. We could deploy projectors, and we could deploy learning management systems, and we could deploy clickers. But all of those had to be deployed with due respect to the sole proprietorship model. I can buy on behalf of the whole university an LMS, and I can connect it to the SIS, the place where the rosters come from, and the places where the grades go. But after that, I just have to stand beside and wait and see how it goes. You know, what are you guys going to do? Now, some professors said, well, look, I can't do this by myself. I'm going to need some help. So every university has something called like the Center for Teaching and Learning Excellence or something like that, right? And what I'd like you to consider for a minute is how big is such a place? Say at a place where there's 2,000 faculty members, what's the ratio of helpers to faculty members? Is it 6 or 7 to 1? So there'd be an army of 12,000 helpers? No. No, it's more like the other way round. Like maybe it's 50 or 100 professors to one instructional designer or one technologist. If CLTE had to provide health care instead of instructional care, then there'd be a hue and a cry that could be heard from everywhere, because there's no possible way that such a small expenditure could have such a significant effect. Really what it is, hey, are you interested? If you're interested, we've got some people to help you. But otherwise, there's no pressure. There's no reason for change. So if you want to use it, go ahead. Now, when I first started at Arizona State University, I was so excited. Wow, cool. I've got hold of the LMS, the learning management system. I'm just going to go through there and find the greatest courses. Syllabus and notes and PowerPoint. Wow, here's a guy who uses a discussion board. Woo! Boy, you got to look and look and look and look. And here's the thing. The LMS is 15 years old. What technology do you know about that after 15 years has done so little? You know, like in that same 15 years, the bank is unrecognizable. Right? Like the bank is complete. Like, who goes to the bank? Hell, you saw the latest thing is you can just take your phone and take pictures of the checks that your mother continues to insist on sending you instead of using bank transfer the way a modern person would. And now you can absolutely take care of that too, right? So all these other industries transforming, here we don't. Why? Because it's sole practitioner model. If we deployed the bank teller technology, like if the banks, you had to respect the teller. Right? Window by window, we're going to convert the bank. Oh yes, I can read your license with this scanner. So now the bank transaction takes 11 minutes instead of 15. That's not how it went. The banks all change, right? With electronic, because this is the only way technology works, folks. It's really hard to make these changes one village at a time. Now look, what a terrible thing to say, that deploying these tools wasn't enough. But deploying these tools is not enough. What we've built, no offense intended, are birdhouses. Birdhouses, children's toys. In comparison to what investment would be able to do. Okay, so appeal to authority. Why believe me? Believe a Nobel laureate. This guy's right. This is the ethos underlying the Open Learning Initiative, for example, at Carnegie Mellon. They're saying, you know, we could get together and design these courses, couldn't we? We could get together and we could design these courses together, and we'd build them all together. And then we'd test them, see how they work, and then the parts that work we'd keep, and the parts that don't work we'd try again, and we just keep doing that. That's the way that a culture of continuous improvement works. And they've been at that, 10 years. They're making some progress. But there's still no market. And what I contend is in the absence of a market, you can't line up the investments necessary to make this go. I believe that the market is what will make this change. And furthermore, I believe that you guys, right here at ground zero, right here at Stanford, you have provided the impetus to make this market with these MOOCs. We're going to talk about that a little more. Look at that fat guy with the vest coat, right? All of us, we think about, come on, that's how distasteful, the market, terrible. Some preconditions certainly exist. How many people are iPad users out there? Can I got an iPad user? Oh, man. Is this the first thing you pick up in the morning? Is it the last thing you put away at night? How sad is that? But it absolutely is for me. I don't know how to explain how this feels like augmentation to me. Without this device, I am less than when I have it. I know more, I can do more, I can communicate more, I can interact better. And so it's no surprise that these technologies have begun to run the table. Right? Knocking hardbacks off, then paperbacks off, then hardbacks and paperbacks off. Things that were impossible to see change. We've reached a kind of convergence there. A convergence strong enough to knock borders straight cold. How much longer till that one is knocked cold? Now, When I get the opportunity to meet with university administrations a lot now. And I ask everyone the same thing. Hey, what's your plan for your bookstore? You guys have a plan for your bookstore? Oh, yeah, we're worried about that. Well, what are you worried about? Well, we figure that, we're all using Kindles and everybody's using, iPads and all these different things. It's pretty clear that like in a decade's time, people aren't going to be buying books. That's not going to happen. Probably even shorter than a decade. Like usually somewhere between 5 and 10 years, they say. Hey, that's really interesting, I say. So next year, what's going to be different down at the bookstore? Oh, well, we've got a new T-shirt section, and we've got, yeah, I know, I get that part, but, how is it changing relative? Oh, no, it's pretty much the same as last year. People put their order in the spring, and then in the fall, the books show up on the pallets, and we sell them. That's kind of how it goes. And the year after that, yeah, I don't know. We're not really clear. We know it's going to change like in a twinkling of an eye. We're just not sure how. So again, this idea, how will this institution change? Well, why is the bookstore so hard to change? Oh, it's right at the core of the sole proprietor model. I'm a sole proprietor. I make the decision about what textbook to use. That's how I know how to do it. There will be no coercion. There'll be no, like I just want to imagine. Oh, here it is. Ready? Here we go. It's the faculty senate. You're all in your togas. I come in. Hi. I'm here to tell you that we're closing down the bookstore. We're all going digital. How far would I get? Like I might get as far as we're closed, and then I'd just be killed. And yet, given everything else that's happening, like just picture what the expectation of students are as they use all these other things in every other domain of their life that work like this. That let them communicate with people quickly, look up all these different things, make all these different connections, do all this stuff. The one place that they'll see what they want to see is in a course like that. The one place that they'll see it is in a MOOC. They will see the glimmer of it. When they take Sebastian Thrun's course, they'll see it. When they take Peter Norvik's course, when they take Andrew Ng's course, they'll see it. Something really different happened when this course came out. By the way, I want you to know I didn't prepare this slide in particular for this audience. I've been using it since it came out. I've been using this pair, and I always feel really bad about this because I don't even know this guy. This Matthew Stone guy, I don't even know him. But I picture what it must have been like for Matthew Stone. He's been teaching artificial intelligence for at least 2 terms, probably more. And his students used to just show up. This is what the artificial intelligence course is. Oh, I don't like it. That's because you're not smart enough to be in here. Bye. Well, but I'm not sure it's a good course. Yeah, I don't know. What do you have to compare it to? Well, as it turns out, Professor Stone, I have this course to compare it to. And it's taught by 2 of the most eminent practitioners in the world. And I got to tell you that it's much better than your course. Wow. Like I used to teach computer graphics. And I knew for a fact other people's courses were better than mine. Like I knew it. Because like who am I? How much do I know about computer graphics? I studied it at school. I'm qualified to teach it. But like on the scale of people teaching computer graphics, I'm pretty far away from the guys at Pixar, I think. And so here it was on this day is the first time, hey, and I pay you a pretty penny for this course. That one's free. But that's not the important part. That's the part where the curve gets jumped. But the thing about this course that isn't true about this course is that this course gets better on that flat curve. As much as Matthew Stone can put into it term over term, that's how much better it gets. Why? Well, how many people take it a term? 50? 60? Do the math. How much money can you spend on it? I'm sorry to be so crass, but if you don't spend money, then you can't get resource. And if you can't get resource, you can't craft things in the real world. But how much better does this course get? Wow. Well, let's see. What kind of investment capital did Coursera raise this year on the strength of courses such as these? What capital did Udacity raise this year with no business model at all? Like none. In fact, they're proud of it. What's your business model? Ha! You're not paying attention. Do you know how many years of education? Watching Andrew Ng talk to a set of land-grant provosts was so cool this year. I was on a panel with him, and there were all these provosts from the land-grant universities. And he shows his course, and he says, yeah, I do about 250 years worth of education a term now. And this course, by the way, is a Stanford course. It's the course I teach. And so just imagine the poor provost from, I'm going to pick a school that wasn't there, Wichita State University, looking at that going, oh my guy doesn't make a course that good to start with. But if there are 150,000, 200,000 people taking this course, I wonder how much better that course gets term over term. How many people work on it? How much production value can be in it? How much analysis can be there to study which things worked, which things don't? Just imagine year over year over year on that curve while Matthew Stone is down there slogging away on the human curve. I believe this is what changes the academy. This right here. The fact that there is now the possibility to compare and that one model can act at scale when the other cannot. Will it put pressure on institutions like yours? I think not. I think not. You've moved into a whole nother rank, right? Like Stanford, holy mackerel, you'll be around like Oxford is around, right? And people will come here to get the Stanford experience. Like I've had a taste of it today, and I felt like I had to overclock my brain. Like I'm exhausted. I'm going to have to take a week off. I don't know how you people do it. But, yes. So, but for all the rest of education, this pressure will be very real. This idea that we've got to find some way will be very real. And right now it's terribly threatening because of the topology of these courses. There's a lot of people right now asking, what does this mean for me? What does it mean for my course? I teach something like that. And maybe there's a first blush where they think, I could make a MOOC. And there are lots of presidents talking to a lot of professors right now going, yeah, I kind of see how you could, but how many, you really think your name is that kind of draw? You know, there's a little sort of ego shrink that's got to happen. Really? You really think that I see how the Stanford guys are doing it. I get how the MIT guys are doing it. You know, the sort of anybody with a compass direction in front of the name of their school, like East whatever state, I don't think you're going to be able to make it happen. Well, then what happens to me? Because there's no role for me in Sebastian Thrun's course, right? Like the topology of that course looks like this. Great man, all the people. It is what one of my colleagues, Jeff Borden, calls a skeuomorph. It's a piece of technology that at one and the same time is highly advanced, yet completely recognizable. As though you had a phone like this, but with a rotary dial interface on the front. So that, yes, I totally get it. It's just like a course, only really big. But notice, where's the local instructor? Where's the class? Where's the school? Nowhere. No role for me. So what I think is true is that if you're Abraham Lincoln or some other autodidact living someplace around the world, like maybe in Bangalore, this thing is fabulous for you, right? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It is not going to Stanford, but boy, it's a lot closer than you were ever going to get before. And your ability to soak it up like a sponge is huge. So our ability to now begin to mine The human capital that has gone squandered for all of human history has just turned a major corner. Because the reach that these things have, the interactivity, the connection that you can have to other people learning the same thing, if you are wickedly self-motivated, can really work. But otherwise, at least at the present generation, these courses, lots of people go in, not very many come out. Like, compared to the for-profits, who are the bottom feeders of all education in many people's minds, these courses have success rates that are orders of magnitude lower than that. So, I think it's a start, but not an end. You know, I'm a Michael Crow groupie. I'm a true believer. And one of the things Michael says is something I'm calling the Crow principle. Is, hey, look, these alternative education models, straighter line with its competency-based education that exists outside of the existing institutions, very interesting model. These MOOCs that are coming out, nobody pays anything, and you get certificates, and they come from Stanford, and they're incredible. Yes, terrific. And they exist outside of the existing institutions. People are beginning to produce things that say, oh, this is the foundation of change. How many of you have seen Epic 2020 that says, oh, at the end, by 2020, there's only a couple of universities left. Google and Apple. And everybody else, except the kings, of course, right? Except Harvard and Yale and, you know, like you guys, that's a whole different tier. But everybody else will be wiped away, replaced by MOOCs. Michael says, you know, interesting, your plans. In the same way that the banks, even though they completely reinvented themselves, did not all disappear, displaced by some brand new internet bank. No, instead, change happens in those institutions because they're knit into the fabric of the society. And so his claim is we've got to come up with a model that's friendly to those institutions, as opposed to scary and hostile. And I think there is such a model. And it's just a topology change. Right, like educational topology is pretty straightforward. We start with a student, people just do their best. I don't know, I put my hand on the stove. Ow. Then tutors. Oh yes, excellent. Tutors, amazing technology to invent. Right, passing on expertise, helping people understand what their zone of proximal development is, helping them know which problems to try and which ones to give up on. And fantastic, amazing. Study groups, single biggest indicator of whether you'll succeed at college or not is whether you form a collaborative study group. Those are missing from MOOCs. We somehow hope they'll just emerge. Oh yeah, there's millions of people and there's like Facebook-like social networking tools. It'll all work out. I'm not sure we should throw that baby out with the bathwater. We've got a fantastic network that builds these topologies. And so what I imagine is a sole proprietorship model that fades away. Not always, not everywhere. Clearly not in upper division, for example. We talked today about this idea, well, what courses would be suitable for this and which ones wouldn't? Well, I submit to you that the following is true. This isn't all the courses, but this is certainly some of them. The courses that are general education courses, that are offered at every university in this country, that are also offered at every community college in this country, that are also offered at every high school in this country, those we could do at scale. And we could do it better. We could do it better, and we could do it better and better. That's my point. We could do it better, and then we could do it better and better and better and better. And it's the better and better and better and better that I'm really interested in. Well, is there no role for the local instructor? No, there's absolutely a role for the local instructor. It's that role. It's absolutely that role. Take the part where you reproduce the work of the guy down the hall to make the lecture notes he's making too. Take the work of, devising the assignments that the woman down the hall is making. Take those away. Release this time to allow people to do human things machines cannot do, things we still do not know how to do at scale, and make a market. Now, I believe the pressures that are on those institutions, coupled with the comparisons to the courses that are going to be deployed at scale for free, those are going to put a tremendous selection pressure that could have the opportunity to make a market if someone could construct something that indicated this would work. Because you'd go from spending this 1,000,000 times, but only this. That course is only as good as that much time, effort, and energy can produce, and go to that. And it will make an enormous difference. I don't understand why we're not hooked on the idea that education should be on a cycle of continuous improvement. I don't understand why we don't have an expectation that if we could teach this many people this fast today, we shouldn't be able then to teach that many people twice as many, twice as fast tomorrow. I don't understand. Every other zone of our lives we do it. Every other place we do it. Every other place we do it. But we don't have the expectation that we can do that in education. Now, maybe it's because it's impossible, so it would be an unreasonable expectation. We don't have the expectation that we can all fly. But I'm not convinced. Here's my son. I'm going to point out a couple things. First, what a handsome boy. Second, he did a cover of Suzanne Vega's Luca. Anybody ever heard this song? Dedicated to my dad. Now, if you know what Luca's about, it's about child abuse. And so it says, which sounds bad considering the song, but I promise it isn't. Thanks a lot, my son. Great. Now, my boy, he's got a following. On YouTube, they work with each other to learn these songs. They learn much faster. But what chance does my son have relative to this guy? Like, I got to tell you, anybody in here play guitar? Go see these. Like, if you ever wanted to play Fire and Rain, it's ridiculous. It's like ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, the production value involved here. It's so much better than having him come to your house to teach you guitar, because first of all, you'd have to feed him. What would he want? Second, you'd have to converse with him. And then, the worst part, the guitars would come out. Okay, Fire and Rain, now you. What? But if you could get over that, right? If you could get over that, you'd be like, could you play that first 3 measures 50 times at half speed for me, please? Which, of course, the video James Taylor is more than happy to do. From inside the guitar, from on top of the fretboard, 50% of the time. It's ridiculous. Imagine if Newton had had a MOOC. Like, just picture what Newton's MOOC would be like today. How long since Newton? Hey, by the way, how long since Euclid? 2,000 years, as the man said. Picture Euclid's MOOC. Who would we not be able to teach geometry to? What kind of person would we not have encountered and figured out by then? Now, why do I think the curve would improve this way? Well, what happened in 30 years from this to this? I don't know. That market did a hell of a lot there. You want to teach people how to be drug dealers, killers. Man, this is the way to do it. How many people have heard this term big data? Yeah, so big data, what's it mean? Oh, this is how Google gets so smart. Everybody sends their queries in, you amass all those queries, then you look for the patterns in the queries, then you match an individual's performance against those queries, and suddenly you're reading minds. This is the power of big data. Wow, big data could help sole proprietors get better. Nope. Why? Well, because apart from, do you come to class? Did you read the book? Did you do the assignments on time? What do classes have in common with one another, even when they're in the same discipline? Not near enough to data mine. But teach it at scale. You think Andrew Ng's course isn't going to be unbelievable from the power of big data? Watching students do the exercises one at a time. Who fails? Who passes? Did you take the hint? Did it work? People who look at this content, it's the Amazon.comification of education. Right? People like you who like things like this can then buy things like that and like them. People like you with these kind of deficits see this kind of content. People believe this. Pearson is investing enormous amounts of money in this. It's like the microscope, you see. Think about medicine before the microscope. How was it practiced? By sole practitioners. How did they develop their craft? On that curve, that flat one. They got better and better. I know what you need. Bleeding. That's what you need. It's worked for me. Except the times it doesn't. What happens when the microscope comes out? Oh my goodness, what happens when the microscope comes out? We start to understand the inner fabric of how it works. And suddenly it's not guesswork anymore. It gets better. I believe this to be real, and I think a lot of your students believe it to be real too. I met with a room full of them today. People who are interested in learning analytics, as it's called. And they are on fire for the possibilities that they could manage in a laboratory like this. Where do you start? General education. Why? For reasons I've already described. Because this is no way to do it. Right? This is no way to do it. We're at the absolute limits of what that is. And the current generations of students, they're not going to continue to put up with it. Because they know that something better could be done. And your MOOCs will show them that better thing. But you got to get to scale. Any given institution, what do they got? Even if they want to do it on their own, even if they were willing to take on the job of saying, what we're going to do, like Arizona State did, we're going to redesign our math curriculum. We're going to get rid of the sole practitioner model. We're going to do this as a team. Well, yeah, but what can you spend? At ASU, the biggest place, $10,000. Dwarfed by the 250 years. So what I claim will happen is this. Watch for a set of universities, small. Partner with a set of community colleges, larger. Partner with a set of high schools, larger still, to agree to work together to design the first one. And then to continue to iterate that. And by these signs will you know that the world is going to change. What else do I have to say to you? Just this. There is, in fact, people talk about gamification a lot. There is a game at the core of education. It is how many kids can we get educated, how fast? How many go your way as opposed to other ways? This is the game we're all playing. This is the game we're playing. This is the contribution we make. And if we can get on this curve, we make enormous difference. You will find me at OpenClass. OpenClass, a platform that we've built distributing free to try to support this kind of education. If you're interested, come see me. These models solve these issues. They solve the revenue model because they layer on top of the textbook model. Instead of buying a textbook, you buy a pass to the mathematical equivalent of World of Warcraft. So no problem with a revenue model. They solve the accreditation model because they colonize the existing accreditation system. One course at a time, as an instructor or a department or a college says, we're going to give up on teaching it our own way, we're going to throw in with a group. When they throw in with a group, they bring their accreditation with them. The people who amass the most accreditation begin to outpace those who do not. So I believe those models will be solved. I believe this is the path to the future. I know how outrageous a statement it is. And so I better shut up and let Mitchell stand up. Thank you.
Well, gosh, Adrian, I thought you were going to be provocative and controversial. That's why we flew you out here. We have a good deal of time to engage in a more plural conversation. And Roy P. and I are dispatched with our talk show microphones. So you want to take someone first on that side? Would you please, this is the rule, you got to stand up and you have to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Betsy. I'm a fourth-year doctoral student here at the School of Education.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for your talk. I'm wondering how you'll avoid sort of the status traps that so much of higher education falls into. That is, I sat here wondering, why should the rock star teacher be someone at Stanford? People who get here are selected on their research rather than their teaching. And, I would imagine that someone who could really be a rock star teacher for most of the students out there in the country would not be found at Stanford. They would probably be found having worked 30 years teaching in their field. So how would you get people, say these sole proprietor professors, to buck the status model. And I could see people bringing in Andrew Ng into their classrooms because he teaches at Stanford.
Right.
But how do you get them to bring in Pearson curriculum?
So I think this is a terrific question, and I think that this issue of branding is central to it. And I don't think it's very clear yet what should carry the brand. It's very evident that the rock star teacher, the James Taylor of machine learning, Andrew Ng, absolutely can develop a following like that. And I think that obviously, particularly for subjects of that kind, that, yeah, clearly a personal brand may be enough. And that's always been what has sat behind a textbook, at least in their inception, right? Like Campbell Biology. I think it's not clear when courses are the thing that we're trafficking in instead of books, what the brand carrier should be. I'm pretty sure it isn't Pearson. I imagine us like as a tiny little thing making sure that we can find a way to put all the elements together and run the machines and make sure that the infrastructure goes and do the matchmaking, if you will. I'm not sure whether institutions might not be able to do this. I'm not sure that, like, for example, say a University of Texas El Paso, who builds a reputation, say, serving the Hispanic community, could start to build a network of other institutions around the country that are also serving that niche, and then develop a curriculum that is respected and driven. So I'm not clear on where the branding will come from. And I think one of the things that we're doing over the course of the next couple of years is trying to understand that. Trying to find out from university administrations and from individual faculty members, what would feel good to you? What would be acceptable to you? What would not make you feel like you were being displaced? Another word about the rock star teacher. If I was teaching at Lansing Community College, and I heard about, let's say I was teaching calculus, and I heard about these MOOCs, and I went and saw one, and I compared it to my course, and I thought, man, that is awesome. Look at all the content that's there. Look at the way the learning analytics works. Look at the feedback the student gets. Look at the feedback I'm doing it. I would be a local rock star on the day that I did it. Students would react to my course in a positive way. They would, wow, this is amazing. And I get so much more personal attention from you than I do in the other courses. So I believe the opportunity for the local rock star to then become the darling of that institution, for the administration to say, hey, how are you doing that? Oh, well, there's this thing, it's MOOCs, this is how it works. Hey, could we do that on a more systematic basis? So I think the opportunity for local instructors to make themselves into local rock stars is absolutely a very real thing, at least at the beginning. But I think it's unclear where the brand will come from.
My question is kind of related to this comment. I actually believe that it's true that from a teaching point of view, you wouldn't necessarily need to have an Andrew Ng be the teacher to communicate information. But what I'm concerned about as a trustee here of Stanford is that we actually need places like Stanford so that teachers have cutting-edge knowledge to teach. And I'm afraid of this model perhaps undermining the ability of institutions like this to create new knowledge that actually moves the frontier out for all of us.
You know, any time we have disruptive change, there's a fear that we'll throw the baby out with the bathwater, that will destroy the very thing we want to make. And I'm sensitive to that idea. But I also believe that institutions like Stanford are almost immune from these kinds of pressures. Because the experience that you provide is so powerful, so unique, that I think you'll always be able to attract it. What I'm concerned about is the millions of people who are never coming to Stanford, right? Because Stanford, it's not like you're getting bigger, right? It's not like you're spreading. It's not like you're 10 times your size in 1950, right? And so what I'm concerned about is not only across this country, but one of the things I'm like totally blown away about is that, and you can see I get like really nervous when I get away from my phone. In Africa right now, 75% of the population has a cell phone. When I read that, I had to read it twice. I had to look it up 10 times. I just didn't believe it. How is this possible? 75% has a cell phone. Now, we know that technology curve, if you're here with 75% penetration with cell phones, it takes less than a decade, and you're here. At the same cost curve that they're at now. So it's not like they have to get like 100 times more wealthy and then they can move up here. No, no, these fall down the curve. And so I want you to imagine a world where everybody in the world has this device. And think about the educational possibilities. You don't have to build an education system like Charlie Ledbetter is a guy who really puts this brilliantly. What's the advice that we give to a developing nation? Oh, well, you should build an education system like ours. After 150 years, you'll have your own Stanford. You know, you start with a village school, and then you build a little bigger one, and then you train your teachers, and then you get an army of teachers, and over the course of 150 years, you could be right where we were 150 years ago. No. What I think they'll say is, hey, can you like throw down some of that MOOC action to me? Maybe you could throw it down in a way that allows my local practitioner, the person who sets up my local school, to interact with my students as a guide on the side. Maybe the data that you can tell me about, that you use that big data analytics we've heard so much about to show me how I should advise my individual students and allow me to connect them to the rest of the globe's information. Can you imagine? So the value that's there just seems so extraordinary to me that I think we'll find a way to preserve what is. Because the opportunity to get the globe up to speed, we're talking inside a decade. If we would take this on as like a moonshot kind of challenge, hey, let's get general education distributable at scale for the planet. Let's get that ready. Think about all the other problems that get solved. Just, it's unimaginable how much human capital goes from zero to the front of the train. Yes, sir. Uh-oh.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm 4 weeks into giving one of these MOOCs.
Are you really?
And if I look tired, it's because I was up at 4 o'clock this morning recording a tutorial, getting it rendered, ready to post at 10 o'clock.
Awesome.
When you talk about a rockstar professor, I mean, I think that gives the idea, there's a way of misunderstanding that. And I think you began to sort of parse that out in the right direction when you talked about local rock stars. Because when you look at the dynamics of these, and I've lived this dynamics for 4 weeks now, it ain't about me. It's about building that community. The learning is going on in that community. And by week 4, I'm largely irrelevant.
What are you teaching? We're interested in that.
I'm teaching a mathematics course, which is why I knew that Euclid was 2,360 years old and so forth. Okay, so it's coming out of Stanford. It's a Stanford MOOC on transition to mathematics.
Super cool.
But really what's going on is building that community. By week 2 or week 3, I was largely irrelevant. The students are answering their own questions. There's a dynamism. It's really about building that community. And then the rock star just does what rock stars do. They take an overdose on something and they lie down and fade away. So we need to be careful what's going on. The Stanford name helps. I've got a lot of books behind me. I'm the NPR math guy. All that helped to start the thing. That brought these 61,000 students in. But once it started, I'm irrelevant.
I think you're probably selling yourself a bit short, but I completely agree with you in the sense that there's the initial creation, which gets us to a different curve. You know, when I drew that curve and said, oh, like moving to this place where now we're going to try to teach this at this next level of scale. And this seminal work that you all are doing, we will look back on it like Pong. Right? We will. I mean, no offense. But we will. We'll look back on it like Pong. Like, wow, such mighty things out of these acorns were grown. Right? And I agree with you that, in fact, it would be a mistake to have it focus on the rock star. The example I'll give is Lavoisier. Lavoisier was like the guy that discovered oxygen, right? And in his day, he was the rock star teacher. And so if he'd had a MOOC about chemistry, he would have institutionalized the caloric theory. The caloric theory being that, as I understand it, that cold is the thing, not heat. And so he would have institutionalized the wrong way to understand chemistry, and in some sense retarded the development of chemistry even more than he did by his influence in the Royal Academy. So it's absolutely dangerous for us to have too much focus on any given rock star. But at the beginning, oh man, the traction that the rock stars are going to get. Because the difference between James Taylor and my boy in terms of what star power they bring when they first start, and then the ability to attract resources to drive continuous improvement as they go. that's I think, going to be a big piece at the origin.
I'm going to take a turn. So, you know, I'm loving everything you're saying because I have tenure at Stanford University, and you are painting for me a picture of an increasingly winner-take-all academy in which a very small number of rock star whatevers provide content for tens of thousands of classrooms, and people who have developed their entire careers and their whole sense of professional identity as artisan teachers become assistants catalyzing my curriculum to their students. So what big idea do you have for convincing a large contingent of the professoriate that they're going to become my teaching assistants?
Well, so one thing is, I'm not going to hire you as the person that tries to pitch it to them. Because if you explain it in that way, there's no chance on earth. But I think that we can look at the Wikipedia model for a minute and say, how is it that Wikipedia displaced the Encyclopedia Britannica? Because Wikipedia isn't written by just a few rock stars, right? Wikipedia has a community. When we talk about these next generation MOOCs, I think they have two communities. They have two communities. One is obvious. Every student that's enrolled is in that community, answering each other's questions, building study groups, doing projects together, doing all that stuff all around the world, absolutely. But another community is the people who are joining together to adopt a certain mode of pedagogy. And so when they join together, some are, hey, I'm really glad to just not have to deal with this, because I'm teaching 6 classes this term. And so the idea that you've given me back some portion of my life is huge for me. Because I don't even really have any pretensions about whether I'm the rock star or not. I'm just feeding my family. Because there's an awful lot of people in this country making a living that way. They teach at a community college, and they teach a couple of online courses for the University of Phoenix, and then they teach another one for Kaplan. And so the opportunity for them to raise the level of their game by leveraging this investment will be huge. But there will be some of them who say, you know, I've got something to contribute to this. Because I've been teaching a bunch of students, and I've seen some stuff that works and doesn't work. And I can begin to contribute in that hierarchy. In the same way that hierarchy of curation emerges outside of the Wikipedia community. In fact, it may well be a way to generate reputation in scholarship. Because the degree to which you have influence in a given pedagogical community will indicate the degree to which you are a rock star. Salman Khan, like it or not, can say, I teach 21 million students a month. Oh, yes, but I have issues with your pedagogical technique. Yeah, okay, so when you teach 26 million students a month, you can come talk to me. You know, when you have results that beat mine, then we can start talking about who's who and what's what. And so I believe that the opportunity to have these pedagogical communities emerge, but be based and ranked on efficacy, as opposed to opinion, as opposed to pedigree, I think that could have a very positive effect on the academy. Yes, sir?
Adrian, I'll take a turn too.
Oh,
I'll
dear.
throw down a challenge
Giddy
to your metaphor of the rock star.
Okay.
I think what you've told us about is a continuous improvement infrastructure and how that's going to be what's revolutionary. It may actually be the case that the people that we think of as now as rock stars actually can't learn from feedback in the way that those who really have a reason to improve will. So it feels like it might be a distortion to focus on the rock star and not to focus on the continuous improvement infrastructure part of the vision.
I just want you to picture if the sign outside had said, Rise of the Continuous Improvement Infrastructure. You could draw a crowd at Stanford, but you're not.
I got your branding point.
No, but I want to make one more point on top of it, right? That the reason I think the MOOCs are so powerful is because at a stroke, they have leveraged the rock star to show what could be. These rock stars are drawing crowds like Pink Floyd would draw a crowd. And so they are opening up they make it possible to disrupt the sole proprietor model. And so in that sense, I think they're forming a very important part of the picture by making it possible to open up this conversation, which I have had to have in my career many times. I've tried to have this sole proprietor conversation, and every time I can be defeated in a minute. A room full of faculty would defeat me in a second. Oh, you know nothing. My course is fantastic. You know nothing. But now that there's Matthew Stone on the one hand with the course he can make with his own hands, and then the course that Andrew Ng can make with his reputation and with what he can draw, I think that shows what can be possible. But I totally agree with you. The rock star is a transitional metaphor, perhaps, right? That could be replaced by a thing that is much friendlier to local instruction. Yes? Although, wait, I want to make one distinction, and I'm sorry to interrupt. The reason I don't want to say it's just like Wikipedia is because I think that I believe a revenue stream has to be in this. It's not that I'm against open courses. I'm not. But if we're going to make these things as good as World of Warcraft, not that they're going to be like, not everybody's going to dress up as a troll and run around. I'm not talking about them being 3D immersive, but I'm saying if we're going to leverage technology at that scale, there's got to be a revenue stream to make this go. Because there aren't any open source movies. Right? Like Martin Scorsese doesn't go, hey, I've got an idea for a movie. Let's just see if we can all get together. You want to attract that kind of talent and concentrate it so that it does a coordinated job. You got to pay them because they have other things they can do otherwise. And so that's the reason I think there is a role above and beyond open educational resources for a model that has a revenue stream that makes it possible for people to do this continuous investment. Yes, sir.
Well, you addressed part of what I was going to ask, but in this current war between public education and corporate for-profit education, how does this shift fit into that argument, and is it just going to blow the whole argument away like a tidal wave and this new paradigm is going to emerge, or is it going to favor corporate education versus public education?
I'm not going to pretend to know all those answers, but I do have some comments to make relative to for-profit education. I don't think there's a war between for-profit education and private and what we think of as public education, because I think that for-profit education, like many disruptors, is operating in a place for the underserved. Right? Like, for-profits aren't really taking students away from, not in large numbers, away from core traditional institutions. Maybe with some notable exceptions, like the HBCs, I think, are suffering at the hands of the for-profits. But in general, you're dealing with a population that can't go to school otherwise. Nobody will take them. They can't be admitted. These students who are going to the University of Phoenix, it's not like, Stanford, UOP. I can't decide. It doesn't go like that. And so I think that it's true that these guys coming up from the underserved, they're much more open to these kinds of models than established institutions. In the same way that a school in Brazil might be much more open to this kind of model than a school in the United States. And so I do think there is a tension between people who are they don't have a tradition of excellence that they're afraid of disrupting. And so as a result, they're much more open to these kinds of models. So I think you will see these models emerge from the underserved first. But then I think they do what disruptive curves always do, like the transistor radio did to the vacuum tube radio. When the transistor radio first comes out, it's much worse than a vacuum tube radio. It's terrible. Who buys them? Teenagers. Teenagers who can't possibly afford vacuum tube radios, but can afford these cheap radios. And then the curve of improvement is exponential. Well, we said that was going to happen. The curve of improvement is exponential in those, and so gradually they eat the entire market. Now, what's dangerous about that is you can get displaced. Now, this graph is a graph of steel. It's a classic disruptive curve model from Clayton Christensen, and it shows how mini mills displaced the previous technology. First, they made rebar steel, the cheapest steel, the worst possible steel. What did the people who made rebar do? Climb the value chain and begin focusing on more expensive steel. Until they got better. Until these mills became not only capable of making rebar, but also then being able to make angle irons and more complicated steel. And so gradually, the new technology comes in waves to displace the old. I think that's a pretty good model for what could happen here. Yes, sir. Man, is this awesome? You guys are so polite to ask all these questions. It's great. You make a guy feel really welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
It's
I was just trying to let you get your thoughts together.
yeah, it's very difficult because there's a lot to think about. You have a lot of different strands, and it would take a long time to untangle the things that I think, hey, this is really interesting, and here's the thing that's really scary. And
I use the
so
loose
on.
ends method of pedagogy.
And of course, we're operating in a time where we don't usually take the time,
Yes.
for one or a group of people. So that's maybe even one of the 3 points. So second one, I'm a professor. I chair the counselor ed department at San Jose State.
Cool.
I'm a full professor. I've been a VP before.
Cool.
I've been a dean. I've worked in Canada. I've worked at an elite school like this one. I've worked at public and private liberal arts college. I've got a very unusual career for such a young and lovely person. So, and my doctorate's in the sociology of higher ed.
Cool.
And I'm in the counseling program, as I said. So, I'll just like a couple snapshot umbrella things, and then I'll be quiet, in hopes that you would respond. Okay.
Great.
So one is that I don't know. I doubt that my content, and I've taught gender studies, ed psych, counselor ed, whatever. I've taught in several areas, not math, not science, but it'll actually connect to what I want to say. I don't know if my content is unique. I do tell a good story. I put on a good show. Sometimes I yell like you do, and other times I'm more thoughtful and pensive like this. I can mix it up. I don't know if my content is great. I mean, I do work on it continuously.
Sure.
But I know that my presence is, meaning that the last school I worked at, Queen's up in Canada, was an elite school. The students, frankly, very interesting, very much like Stanford students, would have been fine, frankly, whether I was there or not. And I taught a course there of 250 people, and I gave them a heck of a show. Many of them were on computers, too. My presence there was entertaining, but I'm not sure would have made a difference. But you've already said, don't worry, Stanford, we're talking about those other people. So I'm over there now. Okay. And actually, related to Claude's work, one of the issue of how people believe about themselves and where they learn that, I'm concerned, as much as I appreciate technology and I try to use it, I'm concerned that unless and until we figure out a way to make people feel seen and heard, because more and more of them aren't. Mental illness is rising, more medications just so people can focus. They're miserable, and people are falling apart in my office. Until we figure out how to make people feel valued and heard, I suppose at a mass scale, and I'm hesitant, I think we have a problem. And then that relates to the money piece. And I appreciate your honesty. You've been honest. It needs to be a revenue stream and so forth. And you talked about the cell phones and how people in these, in countries, whether in Africa or elsewhere, have them. And it is truly amazing that so many people have them. And I heard another story on NPR about how Lafayette, Louisiana, put together a municipal internet so that they could speed it up. Pixar will go there to do their editing. And how the 3 companies now that own essentially the internet transmission in the U.S. have done everything they can to prevent that from spreading. Why? It would be good for the internet access, but it would be terrible for the monopoly.
Yeah, I get that.
And so that relates to the second piece I want to mention, is that this is ultimately a question of monetizing. So you say it's like a Facebook, they got 1 billion people. That would be an incredible accomplishment, something to be just really proud of, but since their stock is going down, it's crap. And so we have that second problem. And so when universities, I've been on cabinets, CFOs make the buying decisions for your products more than a professor does. And you can convince them pretty easily, frankly, with this kind of presentation. But my concern there is then that in the efforts to save money, I often have wondered, what if the millions of dollars that get spent on implementation of new PeopleSoft and other things, what if we just said, we'll take a room, we'll have 30 people in there and a professor, no internet, none of that. Students can buy their Wi-Fi with their phone. The millions of dollars that would be saved, and all the problems of implementation and things break and all of that, perhaps there would be enough money to keep the tuition down and have a personal experience. I say that maybe to be the opposite provocateur, like I'm not a Luddite, but I wonder how this shiny stuff that we've been reading about in Revelations, in this presentation, I wonder how the monetizing piece is interfering with this question of learning, because the excitement isn't about how to educate a mass people, it's how to monetize it, and we have the problem there.
So let me try to connect to a couple things, because
I don't know if that was coherent, but thank you.
No, you said something very important, and it seems as though we're on opposite sides, and we're in fact on the same side in relation to a particular thing. When I talked about the topology of the current generation of MOOCs being the great man communicating to individual students one at a time, bypassing the local instructor, what I said was I felt that it was very important that that topology be changed in the second wave, and that an architecture that is friendly to local providers, that makes it possible for them to do the things that you describe, to spend, in fact, more of their time doing the things that you describe, understanding their students, finding out where they're struggling, helping them to understand how they can make sense of the information that they're gaining from these courses. It's not my intention to say that machines operating at a distance can replace human instruction. It's actually quite the contrary. I think we've got a sort of arbitrary division in this country between traditional education and online education. And even though we talk about blended models, we still fundamentally really think about, oh, well, there's the way we do it, and then there's the online way to do it. And what I think is true is that the marriage of those two is probably the most powerful. The one where you have the leverage of globally constructed materials, where investment actually does allow us to gather up a lot more content, a lot more skill development mechanisms, the power of big data, all of these sort of things that technology can give us, but that then puts it in the hand of a local instructor who can adapt it to their particular set of students. And that's a thing I don't think we have operating yet, and I would like to see that happen. That's the market I would like to see get built.
Okay, people are going to leave very soon to go watch their MOOCs. So we're going to have one more question or comment, and then I'll make a couple of announcements of upcoming opportunities, and we'll
Okay. Well, thanks very much. Sure.
I just have a follow-up question on that last point. I see very much how like this pitch for the Rockstar will attract all the masses, and this works for me. But the second part that you mentioned, like the second stage is just breaking up of the topography that we have. Well, you mentioned like that, but I see this as sort of one of the main problems and sort of the issue. Mm-hmm. I come from a university in Switzerland, and I wonder, like, what will be their pitch then once there's Andrew Ng teaching everything? Like, we're going to provide you with water and, like, nutrition bars while you watch the MOOCs. Like this part of it. And also, what professor, like, what is suddenly his role in, like, in my university, all professors were research professors who then taught.
Sure.
So how big does the transformation of these existing infrastructures that you have, as you say, exist already, how big does it have to be? How disruptive is it also for the, like, is the transition smooth, or will it have to be disruptive too? How big is the system that the state, the government has to set up to change teacher education, whatever, what have you?
So I think that it's far less disruptive in this model than you might think. And I think it's also, though it initially feels quite threatening. Let's unpack your university in Switzerland with the research professors. To what degree do they view the course that they teach as the source of the primary instruction that they have, relative to the contribution that they make to the set of graduate students that they are interacting with in terms of their research? I would submit to you that most of those research professors look at their research group as the primary place that they're adding the most value educationally. And that they look at that, and in fact, somebody today said to me, yeah, a lot of those kind of teachers, this is the work they want to do. They teach class to pay the bills. And so if we can create a model where the courses don't feel quite so primary, and I think this is actually a return to some of the European education models that predated the factory education model that we have today in our universities. Courses have become primary in our thinking, but they weren't primary at Oxford, right? You studied for a year, you read books, you did these things, you worked with a tutor. You gathered that information, catch as catch can, and your tutor's role wasn't to deliver content. It was to guide your instruction. It was to give you a sense for what to study next. Maybe to ascertain in a deep way, not as a standardized test, but in a deep way, are you making progress here, son, or not? And so I suggest to you that there are opportunities created here. There are burdens to put down. There are these courses that we teach, particularly these kind, in these big rooms with this factory model. Lay that burden down. And instead, spend the time that you spend doing that. Talking to David here. You're not wearing your name tag. Right? I think that opportunity exists and can happen inside the existing cost curve. What do I think institutions are going to do? How are they going to differentiate themselves? They're going to differentiate themselves by the kind of learning environment that they provide. Not the individual courses that they teach, but the learning community that they create. If you're at Seton Hill University in the hills of western Pennsylvania, you go there because, oh, this is a quiet place to learn, with a community of people who have been gathered together because they like the feeling of this place. They like the kinds of things that they study. They like the kinds of educational or employment opportunities that come after those kinds of things. I think this is not something to be afraid of. This is something to be embraced and to find out, hey, how do we achieve this advantage so that we can free up the time of these very talented people to begin to find ways to spend the human part, eliminating the part where we do what I'm doing now.
So, Adrian, I think I forgot to tell you that Stanford is a non-sectarian university. This conversation has really just begun, or we've entered it in a new way, thanks to your great intelligence and enthusiasm. There's several opportunities for you all to continue this exchange in the very near future. There's some guy from back east, some economist who used to run a university, who has some opinions about online learning, and he'll be giving the Tanner lectures the next 2 days here at Stanford, so you might pay attention to him. Also, a week from today, you'll check our website. You'll see a visit by Candace Thill, who's the director of the Open Learning Initiative at Carnegie Mellon University. That's a lunch discussion that we'd love to have you back for. And like I said, we'll have weekly forums throughout the quarter and into the coming year. So please join us often and however you wish. Adrian, we thought maybe there was sort of one aspect of carbon-based academic culture that will survive the digital revolution. So this is a small token of our gratitude to you for your time.
Very much.
Don't you want to show us? Yeah.
Of course. Hey, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.